Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep, really deep, into something that just keeps on swirling around. The 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing. And, we hear, yeah, our listeners, you got questions, lots of them.
Oh yeah, tons of folks still wondering if it was all just a big show staged right here on Earth.
Right. So we've gone ahead and gathered up a whole bunch of really interesting stuff, articles, explanations, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, we've got stuff laying out all the arguments against the moon landing, the classic ones. But we also dug up some solid scientific breakdowns and historical context to see if those claims hold any water.
Exactly. And our mission here today is to, really unpack those theories, the hoax theories, and hold them up against all the evidence that backs up this huge achievement. We want to walk you through the facts, plain and simple, about this massive moment in history.
We want to give you the tools to decide for yourselves.
Okay, so let's just dive right in, shall we? One of the biggest things people bring up, and it's hard not to see why, is the flag. You look at those pictures, those iconic pictures, and that flag is waving.
Oh yeah, that's the first thing everyone points to.
But wait a minute, the moon's a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
No atmosphere, no wind, so what's the deal?
Yeah, seems like a huge contradiction. But the thing is, and this is where it gets interesting, the flag itself was designed with this in mind. NASA's engineers, they knew there wouldn't be any wind on the moon.
Smart cookies.
So they got clever. They put this aluminum rod, like a telescopic pole, right along the top edge of the flag. It kept the flag stretched out, made it look all nice and unswirled.
So it wasn't actually waving in the breeze, it was designed to look like it was.
Exactly. And then when the astronauts planted the flagpole, they had to, twist it back and forth, really work it into the lunar soil.
You have to make sure it stayed put.
Yeah. But here's the thing. On the moon, there's no air resistance to slow that movement down.
Ah, so once it started moving, it just kept going.
It just kept swinging back and forth for a while. Kind of like, a pendulum would in a vacuum.
A pendulum in a vacuum, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, but now I'm thinking about that footage from Apollo 17, where the flag moves as the lunar module lifts off. That wasn't astronauts messing with it, was it?
Nope, not at all. That one's all about understanding what happens when a rocket engine fires on the moon.
Lay it on me.
So when the lunar module blasted off, right, that engine sent out a powerful exhaust plume.
A jet of hot gas.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's practically a vacuum, that exhaust still had enough force to shake things up. It vibrated the ground around the landing site, and that vibration traveled right up the flagpole.
Oh, so it's not wind making the flag flutter, it's the whole ground shaking from the rocket engine.
Exactly. Case closed on the waving flag. So what's next?
Okay, let's tackle another visual head-scratcher, the shadows. I've seen arguments about how the shadows in the photos, they don't look parallel. And people say that means there had to be multiple light sources, like they were filming on a soundstage.
Yeah, I've heard that one a lot. It seems pretty logical, right? One sun, parallel shadows. But the thing about the moon, its surface is actually really wonky.
Wonky, huh? In what way?
It's not flat at all. It's got these little hills and dips all over the place, craters, rocks, you name it.
So not like that smooth, flat surface we sometimes see in the pictures.
Yeah, those pictures can be deceiving. So when the sunlight hits this uneven ground, the shadows get all distorted.
They follow the contours of the landscape.
Exactly. So even if two objects are right next to each other, their shadows could look totally different just because the ground's at different angles.
So those wonky shadows don't automatically mean multiple light sources.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Plus, we got to remember the astronauts were using wide-angle lenses a lot of the time to get those big panoramic shots.
Oh, right, to capture as much of the scenery as possible.
Yeah, but those lenses can cause some distortion too, especially at the edges of the frame.
So things that are actually straight might look curved.
Yep, straight lines can get all bent out of shape. And then there's just plain old perspective, like think about standing on a road.
The sides of the road look like they meet in the distance, even though they're parallel.
Exactly. The same thing happens with shadows. Even if they're parallel to each other, as they get farther away, they seem to converge.
So what looks like studio lighting is actually just the moon being, the moon with its weird landscape and some photo trickery thrown in.
Pretty much.
Wow.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just optics and a bit of lunar geography.
Okay, shadow mystery solved. Now this one, I admit, always kind of bugged me. The stars. Why are there no stars in any of those moon photos? You'd think they'd be all over that black sky, right?
It does seem weird, right? You look up at night, you see stars, but in those moon pictures, nothing.
It's like they forgot to add them in.
But it all boils down to how cameras work, specifically exposure settings. It's like when you try to take a picture of something bright at night here on Earth.
Like a building all lit up.
Exactly. Your camera adjusts to capture that bright thing, but everything else gets kind of lost.
All the dimmer stuff in the background disappears.
Yep. And that's what happened on the moon. The cameras were set to capture the lunar surface, which was reflecting a ton of sunlight, and the astronauts in their bright white suits.
Yeah, everything's bathed in sunlight.
So
Yeah.
those distant stars, they're just too faint to show up in those photos. They get completely washed out by all that bright light.
Like trying to see a candle next to a spotlight.
Exactly. It's not some cosmic cover-up. It's just basic photography.
Makes sense. Okay, what about the Van Allen radiation belts? That one always sounded a bit scary.
Yeah, that one throws people off.
Yeah.
The idea is that the astronauts would have been fried by all the radiation in those belts around Earth.
Lethal doses, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, but, and here's the key thing, NASA knew all about these belts. It wasn't a surprise.
So they had a plan.
Absolutely. First off, the spacecraft, especially the command module, where they spent most of their time, was designed with shielding to block a lot of that radiation.
Like armor for the spacecraft.
Kinda, yeah. Plus, and this is really important, the Apollo missions were planned to zip through those belts as quickly as possible.
Like making a run for it.
Haha, pretty much.
Yeah.
They didn't hang around in there. That way, the exposure was kept to a minimum, well within safe limits.
Shielding and a quick getaway. Clever. Okay, let's talk about the wires theory.
Oh yeah, this one's a classic.
People say they see faint lines in the footage that look like wires holding the astronauts up, to fake that low gravity bounce.
I've seen those images. They can look pretty convincing at first glance. But let's unpack this one carefully.
Please do.
So first off, we got to remember, we're talking about old analog video footage.
From the 60s.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's been copied and compressed and wasn't exactly high def to begin with, so there's bound to be some visual glitches.
Like digital noise.
Exactly. Those faint lines could just be artifacts from how the video was processed. Plus, remember those astronaut helmets?
Super reflective, right? Like mirrors.
Yeah, totally. All that sunlight bouncing off those curved surfaces could create all sorts of weird optical effects.
Light streaks that look like wires.
Exactly. And we can't forget the actual equipment the astronauts had on them. Those bulky life support backpacks. They had straps and antennas and all sorts of things sticking out.
So a strap could look like a wire if the camera's blurry.
It's all about those little details and how they show up on camera. And let's be real, if they were using wires, wouldn't the movements look, I don't know, more jerky?
Yeah, you'd think you'd see some unnatural movements.
Exactly. But the astronauts move in a way that makes sense with the moon's low gravity, that slow, bouncy motion.
Okay, and what about those new photos of the landing sites?
Oh yeah, we've got super clear pictures now from satellites like the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and guess what? No wires, no support structures, nothing that shouldn't be there.
And this is kind of a big one. Didn't the Soviets have their eyes on us the whole time?
They're watching our every move, trust me. If they had even a whiff of a fake moon landing, they would have shouted it from the rooftops.
It was the Cold War. They'd have loved to expose us.
Absolutely. Their silence speaks volumes.
Okay, so the wires theory is looking pretty shaky. What about the lunar rover? That thing always looked surprisingly big to me.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a puzzle. How do you fit a car-sized rover into that relatively small lunar lander?
It does seem kind of crammed.
But that's where the ingenuity of those engineers comes in. That lunar rover, it was basically the ultimate space-age flat-pack furniture.
Flat pack like you buy at a store.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
But way more sophisticated. When they sent it up, it was all folded up, super compact.
Like origami.
You got it. Once they landed, the astronauts unfolded it and put it all together right there on the surface.
So it wasn't just stuffed in there. It was designed to collapse and then reassemble.
Exactly. And they used lightweight materials, like aluminum, to keep it as light as possible. Remember, every extra pound meant more fuel.
Makes sense. Fuel was precious on those missions.
Oh yeah, it was all about efficiency. So they used this two-part design for the lunar module, with a descent stage that stayed on the moon.
And the ascent stage that came back up?
Exactly. The rover was stored in that descent stage.
Yeah.
Nice and tidy.
Okay, that's a really neat solution. Now let's talk about some claims that pop up a lot these days. There's this idea that we can't go back to the moon because we've lost the technology.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
And then there's that Obama statement about us not leaving low Earth orbit.
Oh yeah, those get thrown around a lot.
Conspiracy theorists love to use those as proof that the original landing was fake. So what's the real story?
Okay, so with the lost technology thing, it's not that we literally can't build a rocket and go to the moon anymore.
We still know how to do that, right?
Oh, of course. But the specific hardware they used back in the Apollo days The computers, the manufacturing techniques, some of that stuff is pretty outdated.
Like trying to use a rotary phone today.
Haha, kinda. Technology's moved on. We've developed newer, better ways to do things.
And the Artemis program proves we haven't forgotten how to go to the moon.
Exactly. Artemis is all about using cutting-edge tech to get back there and go even further.
So it's not lost technology, it's just evolved technology.
Exactly. Now, about that Obama statement, it's important to look at the context.
Words can be tricky.
They can. So Obama was talking about how since Apollo, we haven't sent people beyond low Earth orbit, where the International Space Station is.
We stuck pretty close to home after Apollo.
We did. NASA focused on the space shuttle and the ISS, both in low Earth orbit. So he was pointing out a gap in our deep space exploration, not denying Apollo.
So he was looking forward, not back.
Exactly. He wanted to push for new missions to go beyond low Earth orbit again. And guess what? That's what Artemis is all about.
Okay, so Obama wasn't saying we never went to the moon, just that we hadn't been back in a while.
That's the gist of it.
But, I have seen people point out that he didn't actually say since Apollo. That lack of clarity could have led to some misunderstanding.
You're right. That's a fair point. The way he phrased it, some people could have taken it the wrong way. But if you look at his whole speech and his administration's space policy overall, it's clear he wasn't questioning Apollo. He was excited about the future of space exploration.
It's all about the context, isn't it?
Always.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the astronauts themselves. There's this idea floating around that they seemed, kind of downbeat after coming back, like they were carrying a big secret.
Oh yeah, the sad astronaut theory.
Exactly. You'd think they'd be ecstatic, right? They just walked on the moon.
It's natural to think that, but imagine what that experience must have been like. It was a huge world-changing event, maybe the biggest thing any of them would ever do.
Ivy stuff.
And they were probably exhausted. Those missions were physically and mentally grueling. Long hours, constant pressure, not much sleep.
I bet coming back to Earth was a shock to the system.
Definitely. And suddenly, they're in the spotlight, everyone wants a piece of them. That kind of pressure can be really intense.
Instant global celebrities.
And remember, they're all individuals with their own personalities. Neil Armstrong, he was always a quiet, private guy.
The strong, silent type.
You could say that. Buzz Aldrin's talked about his struggles with depression after the mission.
So their demeanor might have had more to do with their individual experiences and personalities.
Exactly. It's too simplistic to say they look sad because they were lying.
There were probably a million things going through their minds.
1,000,001.
And while we're on the topic of Neil Armstrong, there's the fact that he rarely gave interviews. And then there's that whole thing about no astronaut ever swearing on a Bible that they went to the moon.
Yeah, those are popular talking points for the conspiracy folks.
So let's address them head on. Why was Armstrong so reluctant to talk about it?
Well, like we said, he was a very private person. He was more interested in the engineering, the challenge, the accomplishment itself, not the fame.
He let his actions speak for themselves.
You got it. As for the Bible oath thing, it's kind of a misunderstanding of how oaths work, especially in science.
It's not like a courtroom drama.
Not at all. Astronauts take professional oaths. They swear to uphold their duties, to be honest, to do their jobs properly. That's enough.
So their word is their bond.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the moon landings, they weren't a religious thing. They were about science, about exploration.
Yeah.
We don't need a Bible to validate scientific discoveries. We have data, we have evidence, we have the moon rocks themselves.
Physical proof.
Exactly. Plus, all those people who worked on the program, all the independent scientists who study the evidence, that's what backs up the moon landings, not some oath on a book.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's get into some of the more, shall we say, creative theories. What about the idea that we went to the moon, but the astronauts found aliens or something, and then everyone got hushed up, and Stanley Kubrick had to fake the whole thing?
Ah, the alien encounter cover-up and the Kubrick conspiracy.
Big ones.
Gotta love those. Look, it's a great story, right? Aliens on the moon, government secrets, a famous director faking it all.
It's like a movie plot.
It is. But there's just no evidence for any of it.
Yeah.
No credible proof of aliens on the moon, no secret cover-up. Apollo ended for reasons that make a lot more sense. Politics, money, changing priorities at NASA.
No secret moon bases or anything.
Not that we know of. And the Kubrick thing, it sounds kind of plausible at first because 2001, A Space Odyssey, looked so realistic for its time. But think about it. Apollo involved hundreds of thousands of people.
A massive team effort.
Keeping a secret that big for that long with nobody talking, it's just not possible.
Yeah.
Someone would have spilled the beans by now.
You'd be the biggest secret ever kept.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that the moon is a very specific place. The way light reflects, the way dust behaves, it's all unique.
You can't just fake that on a set.
Nope. And the Apollo footage, it matches up perfectly with what we know about the moon's environment.
It's all consistent.
Totally. Plus, there's zero proof that Kubrick was ever involved in anything like that. He was an artist or perfectionist. It doesn't fit with what we know about him.
So the Kubrick connection is more of a fun idea than a real possibility?
Pretty much. It's a good story, but the evidence doesn't add up. We have the moon rocks, we have the satellite images, we have the testimony of all those who worked on the program.
It all points to the moon landings being real.
That's the way it...
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. It seems like the moon landing mystery is more about misinterpreting information than actual secrets. So last question, are we back to the moon anytime soon?
Oh yeah, we're going back. Big time. The Artemis program is already underway.
Tell me everything.
All right, so Artemis is all about sending people back to the moon and setting up a permanent base there. We're talking long-term exploration.
No more jumping in for a visit.
Nope, we're talking staying power. It's a multi-phase program. Artemis I already flew. That was an uncrewed test flight of the new rocket and spacecraft.
A dry run?
Yeah, went around the moon and came back safely.
Uh-huh.
Artemis II is next. That'll have astronauts on board, orbiting the moon but not landing yet.
Like a dress rehearsal?
Exactly. That's happening next year. And then the big one, Artemis III, that's when they're actually landing on the moon.
When's that happening?
The plan is 2025. And here's something cool. They're aiming for the south pole of the moon this time.
Why the South Pole?
There might be water ice down there, which would be super valuable for a lunar base.
Like a built-in water supply.
Yep, it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we've got the Lunar Gateway that's going to be a mini space station orbiting the moon.
Like a pit stop for lunar missions?
Exactly. And SpaceX is developing lunar landers to take astronauts down to the surface.
SpaceX is involved.
They're a big player. So yeah, the moon is going to be a busy place in the next few years. It's not just us either. China, Russia, private companies, everyone wants a piece of the lunar action.
It's the new space race.
You could say that.
So it seems like those moon landing conspiracy theories, they're pretty much busted.
Yeah, they don't hold up to scrutiny.
The evidence is overwhelming, the moon landings were real, and we're going back.
It's an exciting time to be following space exploration.
For sure. And you know what? Maybe that's the real takeaway here. It's great to be curious, to question things.
That's what drives us to learn and explore.
Exactly. But it's also important to look at the evidence, to think critically, and to, not jump to conclusions. And as we head back to the moon, who knows what new discoveries await us? What new mysteries will we uncover?
Now, there's a thought to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive, folks. Until next time, keep exploring.